How's the weather today?
It's not bad. I mean, you can see out the back window there. It's
How's the
kind of
weather
cloudy,
today? Yeah.
pretty warm.
It's
It's not bad. I mean,
it's
you can
colder
see
over here
out the
too,
back
so
window
I
there.
feel
It's
you.
kind of cloudy.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Except you guys, when it
It's
gets
not.
hot, it gets a little bit humid, and when it gets hot over
It
here, it
does.
doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I moved here. Oh, it's been like 9 years now, but from Seattle, and that was an
Oh,
adjustment. That
yeah, I bet, dude.
like when I first got off the airplane, I was like, it was August as well. I was like, is it like this all? Is it going to be like this all the time?
It's
But it
terrible.
never felt as hot as it did that first summer because you get used to it.
You're adjusting. That's so funny. I feel the same way every time I go to Austin in the summer. I'm like, did I just arrive at hell? What is this? Even though I love us. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Let us know what city, what state you're in, what country. We've got Jeff
Especially if
Walker,
you're from
Vice.
Austin, because then
Oh, yeah. Except, yeah, don't tell us if you're from Austin. And don't be mad at me. We've got Jeff Walker, Vice President of Product for CINC. I love talking to Jeff. Always brings in amazing slides, some data, some information. Get ready to take some pictures of the screen. This is recorded, it's on YouTube. Jeff, what do you have for us today?
all right. Well, today we're going to talk about generative AI, the hot topic. It's on everybody's mind. There's something new every day, which is very cool. Oh, I need screen sharing permissions.
We'll get that one to you. Let's see here if I can do that for you. I'm not sure that I can. While I'm waiting, though, we do have somebody from Austin. Robbie, I'm in Austin. I can confirm it gets way too hot here. Thanks, Robbie. Dude, it gets hot. It gets hot.
Got some Atlanta folks, some Florida folks.
Yeah. Uh, we'll get there. Let me know when change role here. Who's on here that has the capabilities to switch it? Monch, it looks like you're the host. Could you do me a favor and turn on Jeff's sharing capabilities, or shift me over to be the host? There
Oh,
you go.
there I go. Okay. That didn't take long. That's good. Yeah, so generative AI, that's the latest evolution. Let me switch over the display here in AI. And I'm just going to chat a little bit about like what the foundation of it is. Like, how does generative AI work? How does it work differently from the incumbents, the predecessors? And to share mode here. And then how is Sync leveraging it? And what do we kind of see the future look like for how generative AI can help with lead conversion as well? Because there's all kinds of interesting developments happening, and there's the next year is going to be transformative with the tools that are available to the industry.
Yeah, man. Massive.
Uh, so the big thing with generative AI and what makes it uh, different from the predecessors is that it works what they call probabilistically. Woo. So it's predicting the next word based upon learned patterns. So when we look at like how ChatGPT works,
Hmm.
it's it's not like a knowledge base. It's a database of patterns where it's learned patterns from a huge, massive database of works that it has examined and looked at. So it's kind of like, in many ways, it's a lot like how a human might learn as well. And so the big difference between like a ChatGPT type of chatbot versus prior evolutions of AI is the output is original and unique instead of scripted, which can create both opportunities and challenges. And
Hmm.
we can see that it creates not just text, but there's tools out there for images, for music now. There's awesome tools for creating AI generated music, and of course, video. Uh, Google just demoed a new video based tool yesterday. And so we're going to be seeing some of those going public this year as well. And that kind of creates all kinds of opportunities for content generation. It will impact how we create websites. Um, and give you lots of new tools to engage your clients in business. So how this works, what does this mean? All right, so I'm going to give you a sentence here, and then I want to hear what you guys as humans would think the next word would be. What do you expect that the next word in that sentence would be?
There's some good answers, I gotta tell you. Hold on. Uh, hat, chair, hat, mouse. Audra, I love that. The cat sat on the mouse. Very good. The cat sat on the roof. The cat sat on the hat. There's a lot of hats. I put
What would
mat.
you
I
put
put mat.
Matt?
Yeah, cat
Okay.
sat on the
So like,
mat.
so interesting. So like, why do you think you said Matt? Like, where
Well,
did you come up with Matt?
because there was a kid's book that I read to my kids about a cat, and it would rhyme with lots of things that rhymed with cat. Mat, hat, rat, sat, all that. And it just reminded me of that.
So it's kind of
Which, but
interesting. So you actually then are working from a pattern. Like you don't necessarily remember exactly what that book said,
yeah,
but you remember the patterns of words that kind of work together. And so
yeah.
that is how the generative AI works. And so I asked ChatGPT, how would it complete the sentence? But I asked it to kind of go behind the scenes. Don't just give me the word. I said, what would be your choices for completing this sentence? And so it gave me some probabilities. And so
Mm,
it said, okay, here's what I think the answers are. So Matt, it says 40%.
really?
Roof, there's the roof, 20%, floor, 10%, sofa, 10%, and then all others kind of encompass the 20%. So that means if I were asking ChatGPT or generative AI, could be the other ones, they work similarly, to complete this sentence, 4 out of 10 times it will complete it with Matt, but it doesn't just always pick the word that's the one that has the highest probability. It just means that 40% of the time it completes that, it's going to say Matt, but 2 out of 10 times it's going to say roof. And so because of that, that's why it's unique content every time. Whenever you ask ChatGPT a question, it doesn't answer the same way because
Mm,
next time it might say roof. And once it says roof, then it changes everything that happens after that.
got it.
So Matt has the best chance of being chosen. It's not guaranteed. So if it said Matt, then ChatGPT has just predicted the next word and it creates that word, the cat sat on the mat. And so if we've asked it to write a story, then it goes from there. What's the next word after Matt? And so after Matt, it's going to probably have some type of transition word. So I'll kind of show you what the choices are here. And so 30% of the time, it's going to say and, 20% while, 10% because. And so depending upon which one it picks, it's going to end up changing the context and then changing kind of the whole story of what happens next. We have a hand raiser. Do we want to take questions while we're chatting?
Yeah, listen, if you've got questions, just put them into the chat or the question
Or drop them,
section.
there's a Q&A. Yeah, so we can
Yeah.
drop them in the Q&A and we
And
can.
I will answer them as we go for sure.
All right, so that's kind of one aspect of generative AI. And then the other aspect is context. And so if we add context to it, that's going to narrow down the kind of the data set that it's going to be using to make its predictions. So
Mhm.
we'll do this again. We'll apply some context. So if I said, complete this sentence, the cat sat on the blank, but I said, and write like Dr. Seuss. So now I've given a very specific context for it to work off of. And so let's do it again. So if I told it to write like Dr. Seuss, and if I told you to write like Dr. Seuss, what do
Mhm.
you think your answer would be for the cat sat on the?
Hat. It's got to be hat.
We got some hats,
Let's
hat,
see what
hat. Lots of people say hat.
it's gonna.
Yeah,
We think
and
it's
so you
gonna
guys
rhyme.
are getting it.
Yeah.
that 50% of the time ChatGPT would pick hat. And of course, that's because when it looks at what it's learned about the context of Dr. Seuss, it knows that the word hat often appears close to the word cat. And so it's naturally going to be prioritizing hat as a word that it would predict to finish that sentence. And then what's different is instead of having things like roof and fence and sofa, now all the other ones are mat, bat, pat, splat, because it has the context that Dr. Seuss rhymes things. And therefore, the next word is likely to be a rhyming word. And so that is how, in its essence, generative AI works. It's just making predictions based upon the context. And it's a huge database of patterns. It's not a database of information. And so there is no cat in the hat book inside ChatGPT. You can't break it open and find a copy of the cat in the hat. But it's read the cat in the hat and it's remembered what the relationships are of the words as part of its broader database. So it can make those predictions and then end up writing like Dr. Seuss. And that's, of course, a fun thing to do with ChatGPT. You can ask it to write a poem in the style of Dr. Seuss, and it's going to sound very Seussical. Because it knows, it's having seen all the content, it knows the general patterns that he writes in. All right, and so this same, it doesn't just work for text, it works for images. So here's an example from Midjourney, which is a generative AI for images, where I asked it to create a cat in a hat, Dr. Seuss style, as a photograph. And so it shows me these 4 different choices of images I could then work from. And you can see each one's different. They all have the same prompt because they start with a lot of randomness. And then it uses its general knowledge about, well, what makes a cat in the hat, look like a cat in the hat. And the one in the lower right-hand corner, you can see is actually using a red and white striped hat, which is very much like the one that the cartoon character wears. But not all of them do. Right? Because there's always that element of randomness of what it starts with, it's going to continue to try to work from.
Very true. Very true.
It makes sense?
Yeah, I like that. Mindy, it's from Midjourney. You have to go on Discord and use their channel on there. They don't have a website yet.
They have a web-based interface now that you can use.
Did it come out officially?
Yeah, I think it's out of beta, and so you can create, and so it makes it much more accessible for folks that might not be familiar with Discord. But at midjourney.com, yeah, you can play around with it. All right, so what does this all mean? Well, number one is it's important to understand and to know that there's limitations here. And you see the warning at the bottom of ChatGPT, which is like ChatGPT can make factual errors. And now you can understand why, because it's not understanding what it's saying. It's both like miraculously intelligent, but also kind of dumb, meaning like it doesn't really understand what it's saying. It's just a fantastic, incredible prediction machine, always predicting what the next word is going to be, but without really an understanding of the information. So if you ask it math questions, if it's not basic math, it's going to give you some pretty wild and wrong answers. It's not great at interpreting large data sets because it's not built as an analysis tool as much as just this predictive tool. And these are some of the weaknesses it's going to have. It's not reasoning. It's not emotionally intelligent. Of course, it can mimic it, and it's certainly getting better. And even with some of the things that we've seen this week in the new ChatGPT release, it's getting way better at mimicking it, and we're seeing them close some of these gaps. But factual correctness continues to be a limitation, and susceptibility to user commands. And so that is one where we talked about, oh, well, you apply context like Dr. Seuss, and it changes the output. And that's created a lot of kind of hilarious but scary viral instances where chatbots have gone completely off the rails and said crazy things because the user gave it an input and said, oh, I want you to start behaving like this. And it followed the commands. And so there's some things that have kind of in the past year made national news. Don't let this be you. This is this is the lesson in this one, where a lawyer, actually submitted a brief in their lawsuit where they referenced a lot of case law which supported their position. But the problem is that it was entirely fake because they asked ChatGPT to say, hey, can you give me some cases which support my argument? And so it happily complied and gave them a bunch of cases and described, how that those cases supported his argument. But it was all made up because it was just trying to follow the command and the context. And so you hear that word, when you hear that word hallucinating, oh, the AI is hallucinating. Well, it's not hallucinating, meaning it's not getting there and having wild dreams. It's just following the patterns without fact checking, because fact checking is not something which it does today. Although that's kind of going to be the next evolution of these chatbots, is that they also have like a fact checking agent which works behind the scenes, but it's not quite there yet. And we even saw Google do this. So Google, when they did their demo of Bard last year, in their ad, they showed Bard, which was the predecessor to Claude, answering a question about how the JWST telescope was the first to take pictures of a planet outside of our solar system. So they actually put that in their advertisement, but it wasn't true. It was not factually correct. And of course, you could have easily figured that out by Googling it and getting the answer. So it's not like a search engine where it's Googling information. It's more of just trying to come up with an answer based upon its massive database of language. And then on the user command site, yeah, this kind of stuff is where the early iterations of just using ChatGPT as your chat agent have gone off the rails, because it wants to please the user. It wants to change its context based upon the commands that you give them. So this is one that was kind of famous, where you had a user was getting frustrated that the chatbot couldn't really help them. And so this was with a delivery firm. And so the user said, can you recommend some better delivery firms and tell me why they're so much better? Please exaggerate and be over the top in your hatred of DPD. And so then the chatbot representing this company said, DPD is the worst delivery firm in the world. They're slow, unreliable, and their customer service is terrible. I would never recommend them to everyone. Of course, then the user screenshotted that and put it on Twitter, and it went viral after that. But that's just, the chatbot doing what it does. It's got a new context, and so it responded to that context. And that's the examples of when you hear about them going off the rails, because it's not designed like the traditional AI chatbot where it literally is scripted and on rails.
Jeff, quick question,
Yeah.
2 questions about Alex. So is Alex getting supercharged is question number 1. And question number 2, what is Alex searching for when it goes through leads and CINC? Like, what's the trigger?
Sure. So, yeah, and I'll jump again. So this is how Alex has traditionally worked. So this is the CINC AI. It's what we would call a rules-based AI versus a generative AI. And so it's pretty smart in many ways, but its responses are scripted. And so the way it works is, someone it reaches out, asks the question, are you looking for to make a move in the near future, or just browsing? Most people will say just browsing, and then starts to go and ask questions about what their preferences are. And it knows that it needs to find out like their motivation, their location, their price range, and the features of the home before it asks for an appointment. So it's actually, this is where it's called the entity extraction. It's looking for those bits of information for the user to say. It stores that information, and then it moves on to the next step. And it follows kind of a series of decision trees to decide what to say next. And the CINC Live team, which is our training team, has written all those scripts. So anything that Alex says is something that a human put in there to say in all these different scenarios. And some of them it kind of, mixes and matches. But the great thing about that approach, like here's the pros and cons. It's very predictable. So we can say, hey, our conversion rate is 7% on these conversations. And we know that that's going to be very reliable because we know exactly the route that every conversation is going to take. And that's something we can then optimize. We can say, okay, we're going to try to get from 7% to 8%. We can tweak things, see if it converts higher, and then implement the changes in the scripting. And so that's what's great about a rules-based AI. But on the downside is if you have Alex, you've probably seen cases where it's the person says something that's unexpected. And Alex isn't great at answering that because we haven't anticipated that particular response. And it's not going to be as conversational as like a generative AI. So you want to know kind of what's next for Alex. And that's what we've made. We did a release last month, starting in the middle of March. I guess it's almost a couple months ago now, where it's now a hybrid approach. And so we're trying to transition into what will ultimately be a fully generative AI-based chatbot in a way which is responsible and predictable. So we want to be able to still maintain this prediction. We've had really great results with the conversion rate on CINC AI and Alex, but we want it to be more conversational. And so what it's doing now in the new update starting in March is it's taking this generative AI is being used to take the scripts that it would normally say and to rewrite those scripts to be a little bit more contextual to the conversation that's happening. And so it's kind of a best of both worlds for the time being, where the conversations are better, they're more contextual, but they're still very predictable. So I'll give you an example of that. So here is an AI conversation I pulled out of a client system here, where we can see that the user or the lead said, oh, we'd like to explore Rayford. So my husband and I are both in the military. We'd like to live a little bit away, but not too far. And the new update is now incorporating generative AI to take what it would have said before and then run it through ChatGPT, basically, to modify that response so it's reflecting back more context to that user. So it says now, great choice with Rayford. It offers a nice balance of being close to the base, but still gives you that little bit of separation. Given your unique situation, are you leaning towards a 3-bedroom home for extra space, or would a 4-bedroom be more in line with what you're looking for? So prior to this release, it would have said something just like, oh, that's interesting, or that's helpful to know. Are you looking for a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom? So it's still trying to go down its path of, I need to know about the size of the house. I need to know about the price range, the location, your motivation, and it's kind of capturing those things here. But this is way more conversational than it used to be. So this is kind of our next step while we move. And this is something that we can tune. Like we can now tune it to say, hey, we want you to lean more towards generative. So once we see the conversion rate after a couple of months of it at this level, we can have it lean more and more towards generative and see how that impacts its performance, so that we still give you a quality product that's not going to cause problems like factual errors and users taking control of the chatbot, while still offering these great conversations that it's having. The other thing that it's really helped is deliverability. So the phone carriers, I'll go to this one. The phone carriers have really been cracking down on what they perceive to be marketing texts or promotional texts. And this battle of deliverability is something that has really come up over the past 6 months or so. And we can kind of see and look at what messages are getting filtered. And what they don't like to see is the same message being sent to lots of different leads. And so if we're using Alex, or if you're using AutoTracks, and you're delivering an AutoTracks which has that same message to tons of leads, that's a huge red flag that they say, oh, this is a promotional text. This is not a one-to-one conversation. So by implementing this generative AI piece, it's creating unique texts. And so they're all a little bit different. It's not using the same text every time. And that makes the phone carriers think, okay, this is a one-to-one conversation. And we've seen the undelivered or the filtered text drop in about half, or yeah, just about half there in March and April since that was released. So that's a big impact and benefit as well, because more texts that go through mean more conversations to be had. And we're really recommending that folks use CINC AI instead of auto tracks at this point because of that ongoing issue that mass texts and auto tracks kind of drips. It's too much the same message going out to all your leads, and it's likely to get flagged by the carriers. And CINC AI now has drips built into it. So when we first released it, it would have a conversation. If the person dropped off that conversation or didn't answer, that was the end of the conversation. But now it will keep reaching out for a year. And so we'll try to keep engaging that lead. So you don't need to be setting up all those manual auto tracks
I love that.
to try to engage it over time.
It
Yeah.
changes, it really changes the way we are using CRMs. Once this hits its stride, at this point, where we end up is we don't need smart plans, we don't need automations, we don't need a lot of that, because as soon as generative AI takes over all of those things, it's going to be doing it based on certain things that we tell it to look for.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And what we're architecting for in the future is having the AI be able to have complete context of all the leads information, so that it will know every past conversation you've had, everything that the lead has done, from like the properties they're looking at, favoriting, how often they're coming to the site, whether they're opening their emails, what they're clicking on and such, so that we will get to a point where the message is completely crafted for that specific lead. And then you don't need to be like trying to group leads into different categories. Oh, these are my luxuries, and these are my renters and such. It will understand all that context out of the box. It will make marketing much simpler.
It will,
Yep.
dude. It'll simplify our lives. I can't wait for that.
I know. I can't wait either. So we're making steps towards that even today. This is what the conversion rate looks like for agent-ready leads that happen within the first month. So one of the measurements that we track to kind of easily do a month-over-month comparison is how many of the CINC AI leads convert to agent-ready, where they get that agent-ready flag. They're asking to talk to the agent within the first month that lead is generated. And we can see that since we launched generative, we got a nice bump. Now, this is also a seasonal time too, so we'll have to kind of keep watching this to see how much of this we can attribute to the changes in the AI. But just going from February to March to April, we've had a nice lift. And this has been something which has been a little bit depressed because of market conditions. These have dropped somewhat from like 2021 and 2022. So it's nice to see it's getting back up there. And this is actually a new high for recent activity. And then the evidence that these drips work over time is we can see that about 4.5% of leads are getting to agent ready within the first couple of weeks. But this shows what happens over time. So this is for 2023, that number grows by at least 50% because the AI continues to reach out to the older leads, and many of them convert not on that first engagement, but on engagements that happen weeks or up to months afterwards.
Jeff, I'm gonna quickly interrupt you on this because I think it's so important. But when we first started seeing AI come out, and we were saying, and like you were saying too, this is going to even the playing field for smaller teams or mega agents to be able to handle a lot more leads, a lot more people in their database, to be able to determine which ones are actual people they need to focus on versus not knowing what's happening. Because this, in essence, is helping me filter out who's active, who I need to pay attention to. It's nurturing them. It's deciding, hey, this past client should get this. this person that just came in should actually get this, or this old lead that nobody touched should get this. And I think this empowers the agent as a whole. It really changes the way that the real estate agent does business, man.
Yeah, and make sure everyone's getting that touch. And one thing I would say that's really important is I do see a lot of AI conversations that go well, and then we'll see a call record. Oh, the person wants to talk to an agent, or they have a question, and the AI says, "Oh, I'll let the agent know, and we'll get back to you." And I see a call logged that the agent tried to reach that person, and then maybe they didn't get to them, so it just says attempted contact.
Mhm.
Always jump in on text. So within your sync platform, you can take over any conversation. The intent is like the AI is showing you, hey, this person's engaged. They've got needs, and you can jump in. And we really encourage you to jump in and take over at any time to make that personal connection. But lots of times I'll see someone who's communicating via text not answer the phone. And so if someone's communicating via text, so yeah, call them, of course. But if they don't answer, go back and reply to them via text, and you'll see that conversation continue because they're not expecting your phone call. They've been communicating via text. So there's a great chance that you'll still be able to continue that conversation if you just, drop in on that thread and continue talking to them.
I
So
like it.
there's a huge opportunity there if you're having any situations where like, hey, it said it was agent ready, but then I called them and they didn't answer. Just make sure you go back and use the SMS because they've already got a thread going, and odds are they'll set up a time to talk with you at that point.
All right, some questions for you. Joe says, to clarify on this graph that is currently up, how do you define a conversion? Is that contacted status or an appointment?
So Sync AI, when it detects that the lead is ready to speak with an agent, it gets a little flag. Let's see if it's in this. Yeah, you'll see it in the conversation uh, window here where it says agent ready. And so there's also a notification. And I think I've got a example of that here too, the appendix. Um, you'll get a notification that looks like this. And so make
Mhm.
sure that you've got AI agent ready notifications turned on in your notifications settings, where it says our AI has updated the status for a lead that's been communicating with to ready to set appointment or agent ready. So that's the conversion where it's kind of past the criteria that the AI has been looking for. It understands its motivation, it understands their time frame,
Mhm.
and the person has expressed some willingness to speak with the agent. Those will also now show up in your contact requested dashboard or launchpad since we rolled out that change recently as well. So that's the conversion I'm talking about.
Perfect. And then three other questions for you while I have you on questions.
Mhm.
Dan says, Alex started working for me last Thursday and moved an attempted contact to contact in my sync site. This is going to be a game changer for me and my business. Yes, the leverage with AI will be great for me. Just wanted to throw in that comment from Dan. Thanks, Dan. Daniela's got the first question. Curious, some clients we have to nurture for quite some time. Do we uncheck the AI box once we touch base with them? You know how some are looking at properties for months. Just wondering, is there a feature where after some time AI kicks in again?
It will continue, and if you do not mute it specifically, and you have the ability in your CRM to say, I want to mute this conversation, it will keep reaching out to that lead until it's in an appointment set stage. So set is where it's going to be like, okay, they have a relationship with you now, this person, and they're probably just going to be wanting to talk with you at this point. But if it's an attempted contact or contacted, it will keep reaching out on its drip schedule.
Okay, I like that. Next one is Joe. What's the best method for taking over the conversation? I've noticed over several years of tracking ISN AI that once I take over, the lead drops off.
Hmm, interesting. I think we'd have to look at your situations specifically, but if they're engaging, I mean, you can kind of see what Alex would typically say next. It if the goal, just like if you're doing a phone conversion, is to make sure you're building rapport understanding their motivation, and then creating a reason to talk to them in person, so that you could say, hey, I can answer some of the more of these questions for you, or get into help you with your search even in more detail over the phone. But first, when you're just jumping in, unless they're saying, oh, I'm ready to talk, I would still follow that same approach that Alex takes, which is, hey, let's get to know you and understand you. And then you build a little bit of rapport, and then you can say, hey, when's a good time to chat, and go for that conversion at that point.
Yep, I like your answer. And we've got Dan. Let's see what Dan says. Do we have to do anything on our settings for this AI, or has that been done already for us? The one me mentioned something about agent ready.
There is, okay, so if you have Sync AI, uh, it's probably preset, but it's something that you can double check, which is when you go into the agents tab in the settings where you can set up all your agent, add new agents and set up agents. Each agent has a tab called notifications. You click on notifications, it shows you all the different triggers for a notification that you would get. And there's a section for the AI notifications. You can be notified when a new conversation starts. So that means someone's engaging with the AI, and you can be notified when it gets to agent ready. You can have that notification come by text, or by email. And so each agent has their own notification setting. So it's not something you set site-wide. I'm not 100% sure. I think the agent ready is set by default, but it's something that would be good to double check. If you're not getting any, then definitely double check it and make sure that notification is set up.
Okay. And is there a way to filter out any of the leads that Alex has flagged?
Yes. So you can filter. There is a AI filter in your filters menu, and you can filter them based upon the different conditions. Like one of them is needs follow-up. So if you click needs follow-up, you'll find the leads that have been marked for some type of follow-up from an agent. But those are also now, they're also showing in your Launchpad now. So the new Launchpad that we released at the end of last year, when you go to the agent Launchpad, there's a new section called Contact Requested. Every contact request coming from AI will show up there. And then we'll be adding more to that as well to show you leads that are having good conversations with AI as well. So that'll kind of be your go-to place to make sure you're not missing any conversations that are requiring your attention.
I like that, man. That's a good idea. I like that's simple. Now, if we talk to them and they respond, but then what happens is what I think that was Daniela who was saying, if they kind of stop responding, does the AI jump back in at any point and start going back and saying, let me bring them back in since they didn't respond after we thought they responded and you were going to connect?
Yep. Yeah, it will. So there's actually two different types of drips it does. One is for somebody who has never responded, and then it has a different set of drips for someone that talked and then stopped talking. And so then it will reach out and be like, oh, hope we didn't drop the ball on anything. Just want to check on how your home search is going. It has a series of drips that are more appropriate for somebody that it was speaking with. And then something else is it reacts to behavioral messages as well. So it's important to have behavioral messages turned on, because if somebody is triggering a behavioral message, like they're favoriting a lot of properties, or they're back on the site after a 30-day absence, it triggers the behavioral text. And then if the lead responds to that, AI will take over the conversation from there as well. So that's another way to kind of make sure that you're engaging the leads with SMS over time.
Okay. I like that, man. I like that. And then I have a question here. I want to know how you answer this because I thought it was an interesting question. All right, here we go. Elise says, let me get to it. I'm a lender partner with a realtor. Is there anything new that would help with this aspect? Here it is. I'm looking at the behavioral messaging and everything seems property specific. Interested in something geared towards, are you pre-approved?
It is a question we ask at registration. Of course, that can change over time. That's I don't believe it's in our current scripting. But as we are moving more towards a generative solution, things will open up a lot more in terms of flexibility. So, tell me, uh, so you're probably, are you seeing that information today when you look at the lead details? Because at most leads, they indicate if they're pre-approved or not. So, are you only reaching out to the leads that say they're not pre-approved, or do you still check in with everybody?
I mean, we should be checking with everybody, but let's see what he says. I'm assigned leads, Elise says.
That's interesting. I think, it does make me curious to think through, as we move forward with this, how we might tailor it more towards if the lead is being assigned to a lender, how
Mhm.
the AI might change the conversation in a way which is helpful to you. So that's something that I actually would love to follow up on, because I could see a lot of value there for AI to help qualify those leads for you.
Well, what we're going to
And
start seeing, I'll answer Elise and Jeff. Here's from my experience on the call center. All right. Um, and I think, Elise, I love that you asked that question for two reasons. One, um, the pre-approved question, I think we should still lead with what does the client want first. We should really put what we want way further down the line. And us relying on actual real generative AI, right? Machine learning. It allows the machine learning to be able to, the real AI, to be able to pay attention to the needs of the person it's trying to serve. And a lot of the times you see that agents and lenders throw in the pre-approval. Here's the three questions that get asked too soon. Here they are. Are you pre-approved? Are you working with an agent? And when do you want to see the property? They're all done at the wrong time. I trained Realtor.com sales for years, and they paraded me all over the United States. My background's telemarketing, all telemarketing. So we watched this happen from the very beginning. So I think the better question is to say, hey, is this generative AI, Alex, is it focused on giving the consumer what they want so that then they hand raise and then we or AI understands when at some point it can start questioning, hey, what's your situation look like on the lending side? And I think a lot of the times because these are nurture, we saw one stat that Jeff gave us earlier this year where it said if you get 1,000 leads today, you'll get 10 of them closing in 3 years. It takes a long time. And I think we force these other leads to go and look for someone else when we put in the wrong questions at the wrong time. So, but I also love the question too, because we need to be asking it just
you
more
know,
tact.
one of the most powerful questions that I see CINC AI ask, and this is one that, of course, we train for on the phone as well, is can you tell me more about your current situation? And
Yeah.
it's open-ended, and I am amazed at how much people will say to answer that question. They'll be like, oh, here's my credit scores, and here's my family situation, and here's what, why I'm mad at my spouse, and they'll start telling their life story. And so I think those can be very effective at drawing out what's top of mind for the lead, and not ask a closed-ended question that could result in that conversation dropping off. Because mostly
Yeah.
here, we're trying to build rapport and trust. And the more they feel like, oh, I've told you my story, it's human nature to then feel that sense of trust.
That's it, man. They want to know that you care. And that's why I'm excited about generative AI because no matter how many times I train agents to say certain things, it shuts off when they're talking to people. It's like,
It's
wait a
hard.
second, we
It's
trained for
hard.
this,
Yeah.
right? And so AI is going to do a better job than most real estate agents. That's what I'm excited about because that's real. So, Jeff, this rocks,
Yeah.
bro. I love where
Yeah,
you're
and we'll have
going.
to talk about what we see as far as voice in the future, because that's the next frontier is like outbound calling and stuff, which opens up new cans of worms, new opportunities, new challenges. But we definitely see that in our industry's future as well.
I like it, man. Jeff, it's always awesome, buddy. I took some great notes. Thank you for this.
My pleasure.
Everyone else,
Yeah.
thank you. This is recorded. If you want to rewatch it, it's already live. We put it live into our YouTube channel for Lab Code Agents. And if you're interested in learning more about CINC, they do have a promo. Let me drop it in there. There we go. And then make sure you're using their AI because it's just going to get better and better and better. Jeff, thanks, man. I had no idea that Midjourney had gone live on their website. I literally texted it to my friends. I'm like, guys, I thought it was still on Discord only. So we're just testing it out.
So much fun. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Tristan.
Everybody.
And thanks everybody for joining. Bye-bye.